Hi, Internet. Welcome to the third episode of Pink Paranormal. In this video, I will be going over the 1938 radio drama regarding the War of the Worlds. So, this just was just made known to me. I've never heard of this particular incident. There is a 57-minute video on YouTube if you want to check out the entire broadcast. But apparently people were panicking. So I'm going to go ahead and just read the wiki of this. So this is the War of the Worlds 1938 radio drama. The War of the Worlds was a Halloween episode of the radio series The Mercury Theater on the Air, which was broadcast live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on October 30th, 1938 over the CBS radio network. The episode was directed and narrated by Orson Welles as an adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel The War of the Worlds, and is infamous for inciting a panic by convincing some members of the listening audience that a Martian invasion was actually taking place. Okay. So again, it was CBS Radio. The announcer was Dan Seymour, and the content was written by H.G. Wells. The first half of the program was delivered in a realistic breaking news format. Since the Mercury Theater on the Air had few commercial interruptions, the first break came after fictional reporters had described a devastating alien invasion and the fall of New York City. This apparently caused some confusion and fear among its listeners. Through the scale of the panic, though the scale of the panic is disputed, popular legends hold that some of the radio audience may have been listening to the much more highly rated show, The Chase and Sanborn Hour, with Edgar Bergen on NBC, and switched to the War of the Worlds during a musical interlude, thereby missing Wells's introduction of his show as a work of science fiction. However, modern research suggests that this happened only in rare instances. Officials with CBS became aware of the public's growing reaction while the show was still being performed live. And though there was some pressure to stop the production, it continued to its planned conclusion. There was widespread media outrage in the hours and days that followed. The program's news bulletin format was described as deceptive by some newspapers and public figures, leading to an outcry against the broadcasters and calls for regulation by the FCC. Wells apologized at a hastily called news conference the next morning, and no punitive action was taken. The broadcast and subsequent publicity brought the 23-year-old Wells to the attention of the general public and gave him the reputation of an innovative storyteller and trickster. Okay, I'm just looking through the synopsis. Okay, so in the 57-minute video on YouTube, and I will have it linked in the description if you want to check it out. So the first few bulletins interrupt a program of live music and are relatively calm reports of unusual explosions on Mars, followed by a seemingly unrelated report of an unknown object falling on a farm in Grover's Mill, New Jersey. The crisis escalates dramatically when an on-scene reporter at Grover's Mill describes creatures emerging from what is evidently an alien spacecraft. The aliens employ a heat ray against police and onlookers, and the radio correspondent describes the attack in increasing panic until his audio feed abruptly goes dead. A rapid series of news updates follows, detailing the beginning of a devastating alien invasion and the U.S. military's futile efforts to stop it. The first portion of the episode climaxes with a live report from a rooftop in Manhattan, from where a correspondent describes citizens fleeing from poison smoke released by towering Martian war machines until he coughs and falls silent. Only then does the program take its first break about 30 minutes after Wells's introduction. The second portion of the show shifts to a more conventional radio drama format that follows the survivor, played by Wells, dealing with the aftermath of the invasion and the ongoing Martian occupation of Earth. The final segment lasts about 16 minutes, like the original novel. It concludes with the revelation that the Martians were defeated by microbes rather than by humans. The broadcast ends with a brief, out of character announcement by Wells, in which he compares the show to dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. This is absolutely hilarious. This is me saying this. I'm very happy that I stumbled upon this. This just shows that if information or if evidence was ever shown to the public, I think it's called oncological shock, something like that. I'm probably saying it wrong. Antological? I don't remember the exact word, but it's kind of like culture shock, but instead it's with a species, you know? Um anyway, I don't want to ramble too much. Let me go ahead and skip over to the public reaction. So the show went on the air after 8. At 8:32, Houseman noticed Taylor step out of the studio to take a telephone call in the control room, who returned 4 minutes later looking pale as death, as he had been ordered to immediately interrupt the broadcast with an announcement of the program's fictional content. By the time the order was given, the fictional news reporter, played by Ray Collins, was choking on poison gas as the Martians overwhelmed New York, and the program was less than a minute away from its first scheduled break, which proceeded as previously planned. Actor Stefan Schnabel recalled, I'm probably butchering that, recalled sitting in the answer room. I'm not sure what answer room is. I'm curious. After finishing his on air performance, a few policemen trickled in, then a few more. Soon the room was full of policemen, and a massive struggle was going on between the police page boys and CBS executives who were trying to prevent the cops from busting in and stopping the show. It was a show to witness. During the sign off theme, the phone began ringing. Houseman picked it up, and the furious caller announced he was a mayor of a Midwestern town where mobs were in the streets. Houseman hung up quickly. For we were off the air now, and the studio door had bust open. So the following hours were a nightmare. The building was suddenly full of people in dark blue uniforms. Hustled out of the studio, we were locked into a small back office on another floor. Here we sat incommunicado while network employees were busily collecting, destroying, or logging up all scripts and records of the broadcast. Finally, the press was let loose upon us, ravening for horror. How many deaths had we heard of, implying they knew of thousands? What did we know of the fatal stampede in a Jersey hall, implying it was one of many? What traffic deaths? The ditches must be choked with corpses. The suicides? Okay, so I'm trying to see what the aftermath was of the broadcast, because people thought, essentially, um, just in case the Wikipedia page doesn't describe it well, um, there was a broadcast basically advertising War of the Worlds, and people were switching between radio channels, and they missed the part where the person says this is a fictional piece of work. You know, that aliens are not invading, or I'm sorry, Martians, that's what they called them back then. They weren't invading, it was just a fictional piece of work. But they said it in the first like couple of minutes of the broadcast. So listeners, apparently, you know, there was a mob and police and people were panicking. But I'm very curious. Okay, many newspapers assumed that the large number of phone calls and the scattered reports of listeners rushing about or fleeing their homes proved the existence of a mass panic, but such behavior was never widespread. Oh, so panicking. So panic listeners were actually calling CBS, and then and then yeah. So the Tonight Show host Jack Parr attempted to calm them on the phone on by air by saying the world is not coming to an end. Trust me, when have I ever lied to you? That is hilarious. So yeah, I think this is pretty interesting. I'm definitely gonna hear um at least the first part of the broadcast. It is a very long video, but I'm gonna go ahead again and just link it in the description. Please let me know what you thought about this. I really enjoy filming these pink paranormal videos, and it's called pink because I love the color pink. And it's paranormal because it has to do with creepy things that can't really be explained. In this case, it can be explained, but I was looking for a good story for today, and this is something I recently learned about, and I kind of want to share that with my audience that does watch these videos, that is interested in aliens and, disclosure and all that good stuff. Um, but yeah, it just proves that people may not react well to the evidence. Um, so anyway, so that's going to conclude this video. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.